Hello everyone, this is Global Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Dilwar Hossain. In this show, I talk to people from different cultures, countries, and societies who are currently living in Mobile and the greater Gulf Coast area in the United States. This show is sponsored by the Global US office of the University of South Alabama. Today, we're going to focus on India in terms of culture, tradition, and diversity. India has a unique place in the global scenario. American author Mark Twain said, India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. Our most valuable and most instructive materials in the history of man are treasured up in India only. We're going to talk about the culture, society, and tradition of India in this show today. In between, we'll have some Indian music, and we have four guests from the University of South Alabama community. Dr. Zoya Khan, Associate Professor of Spanish, Dr. Shiladitya Raj Chaudhary, Director of Innovation in Learning Center, Dr. Rajashree De, Assistant Professor of Statistics, and Mr. Vivek Patel, a hospitality management student and the treasurer of Indian Student Association in the university. Welcome everyone to the show. First, I would like to know about your journey to the United States from India. Dr. Zoya Khan, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I came to the US in 1997, and I actually came to the US to do my PhD in Spanish at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I chose University of Michigan because it was, and it still is, a very prestigious university. So I came there, but I really didn't know. I knew it was a very cold place, but I didn't know how cold it was going to be. So I came to Ann Arbor, and I still remember the first day. It was actually fall. I landed on the 20th of August, or it was not fall, but it was moving in that direction. And I was struck by the colorful houses that I saw while one of my friends was, taking me back to Ann Arbor from Detroit. All the flowers were in bloom, and it was a very different sight from Delhi. And I remember writing a lot of letters describing how beautiful Ann Arbor was. And then came the winters, which was two things. First of all, inside the building, the buildings were overheated. But I wanted to see the snow, and people thought I was crazy. So initially, whenever it would snow, I would go outside and stand in the snow, because it was something that I had never seen in Delhi. It had never snowed in Delhi. It gets very cold. So that was how I came to the US to do my PhD. Yeah.
So would you please tell us about your experience with the student, like first experience with the American student?
Yeah, so I actually started teaching my first semester itself over there. So I came with a teaching assistantship, and my first semester, fall of 1997, I taught 2 classes of first year Spanish, which was fun. And there were some interesting encounters as well, especially with pronunciation. So I would say things like schedule, and people would stare at me. Or they would use words like duh. So I was like, what is that? And then they would laugh, because I had no idea what duh was, and they were slangs. The other thing that struck me is that in Spanish, we focus on conversation. So you would ask people on Monday mornings, ¿Qué hiciste este fin de semana? What did you do this weekend? And so then people would start saying, I went to church with my family. And it was always very surprising to me, because in India, at least in my context, and at that time, people had this idea about the United States as Hollywood, and that we Indians are very religious and devout people, but Americans are very glamorous, and they are very secular. They don't go to church, or they are not religious. And we are very family oriented, but others are not. So then I would find it very surprising. The other thing, this was also the year soon afterwards. I think it was around that time that the whole Clinton controversy was starting with Lewinsky. And in India, people are very big fans of the Clintons. And so in my family, we all again share that same admiration for the Clintons, and I couldn't understand why people were getting so upset. So then I had this conversation with a student of mine, and I tried to understand, and he said, you know, like if you are the president of the country, then you have to set the right example for everyone else. So these were some of my memories, initial memories.
Wonderful. Dr. Chaudhary, will you please tell us your experience as a student?
Sure,
in the United
sure,
States?
sure, Delwar. Thank you. So thank you for having us on this program today.
You're welcome.
It's really nice to be here, to be part of the Global Talk program. My experience is a little bit different because I actually started in the US as an undergraduate student. So I came to the US when I was 18 to be a freshman in college, and I went to college in New York State. And probably I came a few years earlier than Dr. Khan did. And so the connections between the US and India, or India and the rest of the world, were much fewer than they are today. For instance, there was no cable TV. Most parts of India did not actually have television, right? This is about 13 years before the internet was even invented. So, that was a huge sea change in terms of getting information. And so even more than the Hollywood that she talked about, we were dependent on things like books and magazines to get a picture of what life in the US was like. So, I went to a private liberal arts college in the Northeast and had a great experience there. Even very simple things like having electricity 24 hours a day and running hot water were actually something that were not easily accessible, even though, I came from decent means back in India. Just the infrastructure was so poor that was not something you could depend upon, right? And then there's wonderful things like libraries, right? So we grew up in India, at least in my generation, with a love of books. And so we learned about the world through books. And to come to a college where there was 500,000 volumes, right, in the library was just fantastic. For one of my classes, I was able to go and get the original paper that Einstein wrote, right, in 1905, that first laid out his theory that ultimately became the theory of special relativity, right? It was in German. I was taking German, but I was able to, from my junior level German class, go and get the original article from the journal because the university had a copy of that journal, right, from 1905. So those types of opportunities, I think, I really appreciated coming to the US.
So would you please tell us your first encounter with the American students?
So the very first encounter with the American student in terms of cultural shock, right? So I lived in a dorm, and in the dorm there were bathrooms, right? So we had communal bathrooms down the hallway, and I thought I lived on an all-male floor. And the first time I walked into the bathroom, and there was, a couple there, and somebody's girlfriend had come to visit him, and this, they were using the bathroom, and then they went into the shower together, and this was something that was not something I'd ever seen before. So that was sort of an interesting cultural introduction to some of the activities that happen in the living settings, the residential settings at an American college. In terms of my classmates, I think the American students, they accepted me. I still feel grateful for this first student in my dorm who sat me down for 3 hours and explained what the American football, college football, was all about. I couldn't believe that it would take 3 hours, even though I came from the land of cricket, which took 5 days. Still, for one particular match to take 3 hours and all the different aspects of it. So I felt welcomed.
That's a wonderful story. Dr. Day,
Yes.
will you please tell your story?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you. Well, I came after 2001, and unlike you two, so that itself was I don't know how it was before 2001, and so we all were kind of a little bit of scared of what would happen because we all heard about the crimes.
Yeah, 9/11.
9/11 and the aftershock. I first came to University of Florida in 2003, and well, after we went there, it was not so. It's just different. That's what it felt. We were 8 of the students. We are coming together, and my first experience with the American food was on the airplane of Delta Airlines, and I had a chicken with broccoli, and ever since I have hated broccoli. I never eat it. Yeah, that was after we landed. It was very, very different because, as Joanne was pointing out, it's in India we think everything is Hollywood, or else at least like Manhattan, New York, everything is a big building. And then we was flying to Gainesville, which is a small airport, and from Atlanta we took a flight where before we took the flight, the air hostess came out and said that please do your restroom before you board the plane.
What was it?
So it was completely different than what I thought it would be. But yeah, I started enjoying it more as Dr. Raj pointed out, that the access to the books. And I also grew up with something which I refer books, and so many books in a library that was unprecedented to me. And so that's how it started. And yeah, I think with the students, I was in teaching a statistics lab. Of course, there is no lab in statistics, but that's how it was designed in the University of Florida, that the students would have a session where they would do some problems, some designated stat problems from the chapter they have already done. And so we were teaching assistant, but we're not teaching a full course, but rather doing that, instructing 3-4 sections of the introductory statistics labs. And imagine this, when I grew up, and for the up to the 10th grade, I went to all boys school. So I was not very comfortable with the girls to start with. And then in Florida, it's September, so very hot. So imagine that. I go to the first lab, and after I'm done, for whatever reason, of course, my dialect was a little different than it is now. Lots of girls surrounding me, and I am just looking at like this and trying to answer my best. And what can be done? That was something, a culture shock, because you don't get to see maybe now in India you do, but like in 10 years back, the girls were really, really dressed very differently than in the United States. So that's how it started. But I never feared teaching. I liked teaching from the get-go, and that was good. And so students typically get to like me because I tell them jokes. So
that's wonderful. So Bibu, you have different story, because I think you were born and raised in the United States.
Yes.
But as an Indian, like as an Indian student, how did you experience like an American culture, like when you came to the college?
Oh, when I came to college, it wasn't that bad, because all my friends from high school, who were great friends with me, came to this college, South Alabama, and I've been accepted all my years ever since I was born, from middle school, high school, and college. And my first year in college, I wasn't that involved in my culture. I wasn't in ISA. I wasn't really involved. And then I just wanted to be more involved because I wanted to expand my knowledge about Hindu culture. So then I applied to be treasurer, and luckily I got it. And it helped me understand more about Hinduism, more about our culture, more about how we want to spread our passion to everyone, not just Indians. So we try our best to spread it out to everyone, whoever is interested. And that's mainly how I was more into this culture and how it helped me expand and learn more about it.
Wonderful.
So I would, if I may,
sure.
Just since you are starting, I'd just like to point out that Indian culture is not everything about Hinduism. So that is one important point that I feel embodies India. That it is a mixed culture. The Islam came in, and then we are occupied by the British for 200 years.
Yeah, so Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism also. So,
And Christianity actually is not because of the British. Christianity is almost as old in India as Christianity is.
Islam is. You mean.
Islam is also, the Muslims came in around
Year
10th
1000.
century AD.
Yeah.
But Christian traders, and there are also stories about Jesus traveling through what is now
Kashmir. Yeah.
So India has a very rich, and then Buddhism, of course, was born in India. So yeah, I mean it's like you were saying that it's the home of it's the cradle of world human civilizations, and in that sense, one thing that Indians are very proud of is the multiplicity of languages spoken there, and also the faiths that are practiced there.
So yeah, in terms of culture, religion, and diversity, India is, and also democracy, is one of the examples in the world. So after a quick break, we will have classical Indian raga by Dr. Chaudhary.
All right. My name is Raj Chaudhary again, and what we're going to do today is give you a little bit of a taste of an Indian classical scale, a rag called Rag Bhairav. Rag Bhairav is an early morning rag, and in terms of Western scales, it's sort of like a harmonic minor. It uses the second and the sixth notes in the scale to be flat. And Dr. Rajarshi De is going to join me on the vocals. And since we don't have a lot of other musicians available here, I'm actually going to use an app that's going to provide some of the rhythmic accompaniment. So we're going to first introduce the scale of the rag and then do a short composition, a pretty well-known religious hymn called Jago Mohana Pyare, which is set in the scale of Rag Bhairav. The instrument that I'm playing, the main instrument here is called the harmonium. The harmonium is a reed-based instrument, so it's like an accordion, sounds sort of like an accordion. And I'm going to use my left hand to pump the bellows, and that provides air that pushes through the reeds to make the sound. So we're first going to introduce just the notes of the scale called Arohan, Avrohan, the ascending and descending notes of the scale. Ready? So the composition that we're going to sing is set in a 16-beat rhythm called Teen Tal. Here we go. Jago Mohan Pyare, Jago Mohan Pyare, Savani Surat Mohe Man Hi Bhave, Sundar Shyam Hamare, Jago Mohan Pyare. Jago Mohan Pyare, Savali Surat Mohe Man Bhave, Sundar Shyam Hamare, Tum
जागो मोहन प्यारे प्रात समय उठे भानुदय भय ग्वाल बाल सब भूपत ठारे प्रात समय उठे भानुदय भय ग्वाल बाल सब भूपत ठारे दर्शन के सब भूखे प्यासे दर्शन के सब भूखे प्यासे उठी उठी नंद किशोरे उठे उठी नंद किशोरे तुम जागो मोहन प्यारे जागो मोहन जागो मोहन जागो मोहन
Thank you. Dr. Chaudhary, you are a musician and you have been teaching Indian music for a long time in the United States. So would you please tell us your experience teaching Indian music and how American students, they think about the Indian music?
Sure. So I've been fortunate enough since the time I was really, well, both an undergrad and as well as a graduate student, to have been in places where there were other Indian music classes being taught. I was trained for about 9.5 years while I was in India in Indian classical music. And the example that we heard earlier, that is actually the North Indian classical tradition. So one of the great things about Indian music is that in the classical music, is that we actually have separate traditions, separate theories within North Indian music and South Indian music. So I'm trained in the North Indian style, also called Hindustani style. And because I came to the US when I was pretty young, I had to sort of make a decision. I made a conscious decision in terms of what parts of my culture was I going to hold on to. And the music was an easy one, but I brought instruments with me from India in suitcases, covered, packed as well as I could to make sure that they didn't get damaged, because back in those days you couldn't get any instruments here. And part of my training, and I guess as a teacher, I naturally wanted to share this with the world, right? And so sometimes I would be singing as the opening act while a big rock band was like setting up behind me at like a student fest, right, at my college or in the university. And in Virginia, as well as a couple of different schools here in Alabama, I've been able to actually convince the music department that even though I don't have traditional American accredited degrees in music, I've had significant formal training, and I've done enough of a body of work in terms of functions and performances that I've been able to teach this through the music department. And so it's been a huge part of my outreach, and it's very gratifying to me when I'm able to share this with American college students. Right? So, the music is not for everyone. So on the very first day of class each semester, some students will come, they will get a real taste of it because they're unfamiliar with it. And for some, they'll fall in love with it, and some they'll say, no, this is not for me, goodbye, which is okay, that's fine, right? One of the funny stories from my students is that because we sit on the ground, so here I was standing up, but when I teach, I actually teach traditional Indian style, which is sitting cross-legged on the ground, right, on the floor, because these instruments usually are meant for sitting on the floor. That's our traditional South Asian customs. One of the hardest things students have difficulty with, those who don't do yoga at least, is actually sitting on the floor cross-legged for 2 hours, right? So we always have to take stretching breaks, right? So people can just stretch. And so once they get used to it during the duration of a semester, then it's okay. But that's one of the hardest things.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was your student last semester, I think, in Indian Music Ensemble.
Right.
So that was
Yeah.
wonderful, you know, wonderful experience. So Dr. Khan, you are in Spanish literature, but you have some good knowledge about Indian literature too. So do you please recite a poem or share a poem, Indian poem with us?
Well, I have, because you had told me, so I brought, I thought about which poems to choose, and then finally, this is a poem by a poet, a Hindi poet, Harivansh Rai Bachchan. More people are familiar with his son, Amitabh Bachchan, who was a major superstar, the first superstar of Indian film industry in the 70s and the 80s. But Harivansh Rai Bachchan was in fact a very important figure of 20th century Hindi literature, and a poet and a revolutionary poet. So this poem, which I'm going to recite, and I'll recite it in Hindi. I couldn't find its translation in English, so I have done a sort of kind of a pedestrian translation in English myself this morning. But we studied it in school, and I have found myself from time to time thinking about some of those verses. So I thought that this is a poem that is, in that sense, personal for me. So, so I'm going to recite it first in Hindi.
Sure.
मैं हूँ उनके साथ खड़ी जो सीधी रखते अपनी रील, कभी नहीं दो तज सकते हैं अपना न्यायोचित अधिकार, कभी नहीं जो सह सकते हैं शीश दबाकर अत्याचार, एक अकेले हों या उनके साथ खड़ी हो भारी भीड़, मैं हूँ उनके साथ खड़ी जो सीधी रखते अपनी रील, निर्भय होकर घोषित करते जो अपने उद्गार विचार, जिनकी जीवा पर होते हैं उनके अंतर का अंगार, नहीं जिन्हें चुप कर सकती है आतताइयों की शमशीर, मैं हूँ उनके साथ खड़ी जो सीधी रखते अपनी रील, नहीं झुका करते जो दुनिया से करने को समझौता, ऊंचे से ऊंचे सपनों को देते रहते जो न्योता, दूर देखती जिनकी पैनी आँख भविष्य का तमचीर, मैं हूँ उनके साथ खड़ी जो सीधी रखते अपनी रील, जो अपने कंधों से पर्वत से बढ़ रख कर लेते हैं, पथ की बाधाओं को जिनके पांव चुनौती देते हैं, जिनको बांध नहीं सकती है लोहे की बेड़ी जंजीर, मैं हूँ उनके साथ खड़ी जो सीधी रखते अपनी रील, जो चलते हैं अपने छप्पर के ऊपर लू का घर कर, हर जीत का सौदा करते जो अपने प्राणों की बाजी पर, कूद उददी में नहीं पलट कर फिर जो ताका करते तीर, मैं हूँ उनके साथ खड़ी जो सीधी रखते अपनी रील, तुम हो कौन कहो जो मुझसे सही गलत पत लो तो जान, सोच सोच कर पूछ कर बोलो कब चलता तूफान, सतपथ वही है जिस पर अपनी छाती ताने जाते वीर, मैं हूँ उनके साथ खड़ी जो सीधी रखते अपनी रील. So here is my translation, and Harivansh Rai Bachchan, as many 20th century Indian poets, both Hindi and Urdu poets, were revolutionary. Mid 20th century India, it's a young India, it's hopeful, it's looking forward to the future, and his poem, as you will see, conveys that spirit of both strength, optimism, and resolve. I stand with those who hold their backs upright, those who never can surrender their law-given rights, those who never can any cruelty abide. I stand with those who hold their backs upright, those who fearlessly their sincere thoughts announce, those who stunts their inner fire pronounce, those whom the tyrant's sword cannot quiet. I stand with those who hold their backs upright. those who never bow with the word to compromise, those who higher and higher dreams in white, those whose eagle eye penetrates the future's twilight. I stand with those who hold their backs upright. Those who with their shoulders the mountains crash, the paths obstacles whose feet defy, those who cannot by iron fetters be tied. I stand with those who hold their backs upright. Who are you who asks me which path is wrong and which right? Have you seen a storm hesitating and doubting strike? Right is the path where the brave go with their heads held high. I stand with those who hold their backs upright.
It's wonderful.
Very nice.
So, you are also professor in Spanish language and literature. Could you please tell us your experience, how India and Indian culture have been mentioned in Spanish literature?
So, not just mentioned, let me just say that in a way, in an roundabout way, India in Spanish literature is as old as Spanish literature is. And that's because Spain lived under Arab rule for almost 800 years. Arabs were basically like the crossroads between the East and the West. They took ideas from the East and brought them to the West, which was Spain. So Spain, in a way, was also the crossing where Eastern ideas encountered Western ideas. So Panchtantra stories were one such collection. They were taken by, and we are all familiar, Panchtantra are an ancient set of Indian fables. The Arabs took them to Spain with them, and Arabs themselves contributed a lot to the development of Spanish language. We all know that with their vocabulary, but what they also contributed were their own fables, their stories, which were in fact Indian stories. So Panchtantra through the Arabs became Kalila wa Dimna, a collection of Spanish fables, which are one of the oldest texts of Spanish literature. So that's as we can see, it's as old as Spanish literature itself is in a sense. But then more recently in Spain, Rabindranath Tagore, a Nobel laureate in literature. In 1913, he got the Nobel. Was it 1913? 1913, he got the Nobel Award for literature. He had great admirers in Spain. One of them was Juan Ramon Jimenez, who later on would go on to get the Nobel Prize himself. But he and his wife Zenobia, Juan Ramon Jimenez and his wife Zenobia, translated Tagore's Gitanjali to Spanish. And that work of translation also then shaped Juan Ramon Jimenez's own poetic production. So there again we have how Indian literature influenced the development, and it was not just the dialogue between Spain and India. And Tagore also had admirers in Latin America, because let's not forget that in fact my specialization is Latin American literature. So he had admirers in Latin America as well. One of them was a poet called Victoria Ocampo. And in fact, one of my professors in India is working on a movie which is between this correspondence between Tagore and Victoria Ocampo. So Victoria Ocampo's poetry, I think, was also influenced by that exchange. Later on, Octavio Paz, again another Nobel laureate from Mexico. He was the Mexican ambassador to India in the 60s.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Didn't know that.
and that's when I started learning Spanish at Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. And the university itself was founded in the 60s. Along with it, the School of Languages, whose product I am. So my professors were in fact students there when Octavio Paz was the ambassador. And one of Octavio Paz's collection, El Mono Gramatical, I can't think of how it has been translated into English, but the grammatical monkey. it was actually influenced by Indian poetic construction. So there is again another influence of India in Mexican literature, and which is in fact very important Hispanic literature. So those are some influences. Then this past summer I was in Spain, and Spain always has had this fascination with Indian literature and Indian traditions, Indian mythology. And I have this very old friend there who lives, he's a lawyer in Spain, and he has now, he's a big admirer of India, and he has started this Institute of Indology. So, and they every year they have these meetings, they get together and they work to promote Indian culture and interest in Indian culture in Spain.
That's wonderful.
So, and the other thing I noticed in 2001, 2001 when 9/11 happened, I was actually on my way to Bolivia. So that's another story. But when after a little postponement, I got there. I realized that people in Bolivia actually knew a lot about Gandhi, about Tagore, and I was surprised because I would not have expected that, there. So.
Okay, Dr. Day, you are very active in the Indian community in Mobile and also in Birmingham and Greater Gulf Coast area.
Yeah.
So, what kind of
That's-
activities you
Yeah.
do for the community?
Yeah, that's my pastime, no? One of the thing I say is that, and we didn't really touch that on this talk show, is basically India is not a single language country. We do not have a national language. That is strange, but we have about 22, 23, I forgot, but 20 plus nationally recognized regional languages. So India is, we can think about India as almost like in Europe, where each country has a different
yeah.
language. So here, each state might have different language. And as you know, I'm involved with the whole Indian community too, and I am also involved in the smaller community called Bengali community. You speak the same language as us. But the point I'm trying to make is that when I think about it, our second generation, our next generation, and we all want, of course, we have learned so many things when we came. I came from here. I came to here, and we learned so much. But at the end of the day, we also like to hold some traditions, right? And that is my inspiration. I try to get together with the families and do cultural programs. I sing. I do a lot of short skits. And some cases I do arrange for most of these to happen during festivals. We just had our, I'm talking about the Bengali community, we just had Bengali and Hindu community. We just had our biggest festival, the Durga Puja, and that's celebrated not in here but in Birmingham, so that's why I have to go to Birmingham. But we have Diwali, which is more pan-Indian than, I guess, yeah. At least if you think about the two Indian festivals, Diwali and Holi, which is the festival of colors in March. But Diwali is the fall-time festival where you celebrate with light and sound. That's also happening tomorrow for one of the community. I mean, even here we are not. There are many smaller communities, but one of the largest community of Indians here at Mobile, IAGM, they are celebrating it tomorrow. By the time it is televised, it will already be in past. But the point is, I try to get involved because I want my kid to learn about the traditions and Indian culture as well as Bengali culture. So,
yeah, that's wonderful. So, Bibi, you are involved with the Indian Student Association, right?
Yes.
So I read your mission statement on the website. It says that to cultivate cultural awareness in the Mobile area by collaborating with the university students and the local community. So to accomplish your mission, what kind of activities you guys do on campus?
Well, first of all, we have henna fundraisers. Like, we always like to reach out to anyone who wants henna on their hand anywhere, we do that for a fundraiser so we can give out amazing events. We've had our Gerber event, which was a few weeks ago. It was a big success. And November 17th, we have our Diwali program, which is going to be one of our biggest events. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have drama, we're going to have dances, we're going to have people singing, free food and all that.
Free food. Okay, that's
Yeah, free food is always good.
It's going to be amazing. And plus, I'm going to be dancing too.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
yeah. And
What
next
kind of
sem-
dances do you do?
Bollywood dances?
That is, I have not decided. It's a secret.
It's a secret.
you'll
Okay, all
have-
right, we have to come to the.
You'll have to see.
now.
You have to
Watch
come.
out.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Okay.
And next semester we will have our Holi,
Oh yeah, that's
which is like, for some people who don't know, I always tell them it's like a color run without the running. I tell them
Right.
it's like that
yeah.
because there's powder everywhere, and obviously it's festival of light, and we're just trying to spread around like what we do, so then people will understand what we do to spread out our culture, and we want to show them it's fun. It's nothing too serious. We like to show them that we like to have a fun time, and to show all students that we can all be one and not separated.
Okay, that's wonderful. So, viewers and listeners, thank you so very much for watching and listening this show. We are going to end this show with music, Indian music. Dr. Chaudhary, he is going to sing a song which basically tells the story of India, that is unified India, that is the diverse, culturally diverse, and in terms of the religion, culture, and in terms of tradition, India is a very unique country. So.
Raghupati Raghu?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just give me a second. Just get going
So,
here.
this is also a religious song, kind of, but yeah, it is probably more famous because Mahatma Gandhi
Yeah.
really made it
This
popular.
was one of his favorite.
Favorite
Yeah.
songs, yeah.
So the name of the song is Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, and if any of you've seen the movie Gandhi, when the closing credits are rolling in Gandhi, this is actually the song that's playing in the background. And of course, many people in relation to India, as they were just saying, have heard of Mahatma Gandhi. And one of the reasons it's playing during the credits is because this is generally credited as being Gandhi's favorite religious hymn. I have a funny story to tell just for a second. Some of my students at Auburn learned this song when I was at Auburn University, and then they went to Atlanta to Little Five Points, and they heard a group of sort of street musicians, Hare Krishna, Vaishnav types, singing this, and they went and joined with them and were able to have a nice little communal moment singing Raghupati.
Everyone can join, I guess. You can join.
I don't know all the words, but I might. Yeah.
Just join, just sing whenever you can. You know Raghupati? Join.
Let's all sing together.
Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patit Pavan Sitaram. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patit Pavan Sitaram. Sitaram Jai Sitaram. Bhaj pyare tu Sitaram. Sitaram Jai Sitaram. Bhaj pyare tu Sitaram. Jai Jai Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patit Pavan Sitaram.
Ishwar.
Ishwar Allah Tero सबको सम्मति दे भगवान ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरो नाम सबको सम्मति दे भगवान जय जय रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम.
Thank you and namaste, Indian style.
समय उठे भानुदय भय